Wait. Sorry, what are you listening to? Oh, I'm listening to Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. Thank you. Tchaikovsky was born on May 7th, 1840, Boskink, Russia. His love for music started from an early age, which led to his first composition at the age of 4 and him starting piano lessons at the age of 5. His dad invited Rudolf Kundinger for piano lessons to distract him from his mom's death in 1854. At 17, Tchaikovsky was introduced to Luigi Piccoli, an Italian singer. Piccoli was the first to really appreciate Tchaikovsky's musical talent and developed a lifelong interest/passion for Italian music. Don Giovanni by Mozart was also another Italian influence.
In 1861, he traveled outside of Russia to Germany, France, and England. In October of that year, he started taking lessons at the Russian Musical Society. Later, when the St. Petersburg Conservatory was opened, he was among the first students. There, he spent 3 years studying harmony and counterpoint with Nikolai Zaremba, and during that time, he wrote his first overture named The Storm. After graduating from St. Petersburg, he moved to Moscow to teach music theory at the Moscow Conservatory. Nikolai Rubinstein, the director, offered him the position and was the one that helped to make it bearable for Tchaikovsky, as he found the job very difficult. Just after he accepted the position, he wrote his very first symphony in G minor and his first opera, The Voyevoda. The Voyevoda was very well received by an influential group of nationalistic Russian composers called the Five. He also met Belgian mezzo-soprano Desiree Artaud in 1868, who he considered marrying at one point, but the relationship ended in a failure.
In 1869, Tchaikovsky completed the Romeo and Juliet Fantasy Overture, which he subtly adapted sonata form to give recognition to the dramatic structure of Shakespeare's play. Rubinstein conducted a very successful performance of it, and it became Tchaikovsky's first composition to enter the standard international classical repertoire. In the summer of 1872, Tchaikovsky went to his sister's estate in Ukraine and started to work out on his second symphony, which he completed that year. His next two operas, The Opernik and Vakuda the Smith, were not well received by critics. He started to build a reputation for instrumental works rather than operas due to this. At the end of 1874, he wrote Piano Concerto No. 1 in B-flat minor, which was very successful despite Rubinstein's feelings towards it, and in the summer of 1875, he composed his third symphony, which was almost an immediate success in Russia.
In the year 1875, he left Russia to travel Europe. In this time, he saw Bizet's Carmen, which he was very impressed with, and Wagner's Ring Cycle, which he was less impressed with. In 1876, he finished writing The Swan Lake, which is the first ballet of his famous trilogy. During this year, he wrote the finishing touches for his symphonic fantasia, Francesca di Rimini. He also became increasingly popular to the public in Russia and outside of Russia, which meant that his public life became more interesting. Homosexuality was illegal in Russia, which meant that he was not comfortable expressing it in public. Due to that, he married Antonina Milyukova in the summer of 1877. During that time, he realized that his sexual orientation could not be changed, and on February 13, 1878, he wrote a letter to his brother saying the following.
During this time, Tchaikovsky was being given a monthly allowance by his patroness, Nadezhda von Meck. This allowed him to resign from the conservatory in 1878 to focus solely on writing music. He had never met Nadezhda von Meck, but they frequently wrote letters to each other about politics, ideology, religious faith, and the nature of love. Since he left the conservatory, he became very productive, writing his opera Eugene Onegin, Symphony No. 4 in F minor, and his only violin concerto in D major, which is considered one of the greatest and hardest violin concertos. He then worked on another opera named The Maid of Orleans, which was not very successful. Over the next 10 years, he worked on many pieces, including his Symphony No. 5 in E minor, 1888, Capriccio Italian, 1880, and the 1812 Overture in 1880.
At the beginning of 1886, he settled down in a rented country house near Kilt. His daily routine became reading, walking in the forest, composing in the morning and afternoons, and playing piano duets with his friends in the evenings. In January 1887, at the premiere of his opera Tchaikovsky, he finally overcame his fear of conducting. December of that year, he went on his first European tour as a conductor in Leipzig, Berlin, Prague, Hamburg, Paris, and London, which were all very successful, and he went on in a second tour in 1889. Between October 1888 and August 1889, he composed his second ballet, The Sleeping Beauty, and during the winter of 1890, while he was staying in Florence, he locked in on his third Pushkin opera, The Queen of Spades, which was written in 44 days and considered his finest opera. Later that year, Nadezhda von Meck wrote to him saying that she could not continue his allowance because she was close to ruin. After that, they stopped sending letters to each other.
In the spring of 1891, he was invited to the U.S. for the inauguration of Carnegie Hall in New York City. After the inauguration, he went back to Russia and finished his last two compositions for Stage 1 of Act La Lenta, 1891, and Act 2 of Nutcracker, 1892. In February 1893, he started working on his Symphony No. 6 in B minor, Symphonie Pathétique, which became very famous. He actually dedicated the symphony to his nephew, Vladimir Davidov, who was 21, who became an object for Tchaikovsky's passionate love. After his American European tours, he got an honorary doctorate from the University of Cambridge in June 1893. On October 16th, he conducted his new symphony's premiere in St. Petersburg, which he really liked, but it was unfortunately unsuccessful. Then, on October 21st, he suddenly became ill and was diagnosed with cholera due to an epidemic going around in St. Petersburg. He died 4 days later. There are rumors going around in the late 20th century saying Tchaikovsky had committed suicide because he was told to by the Tsar Alexander III of Russia as a censure of the composer's homosexuality.
Over the span of his life, Tchaikovsky wrote 11 operas, 7 symphonies, 3 ballets, 11 overtures, 3 piano concertos, and over 100 piano pieces. He was the first composer to incorporate live cadence in his music, which you could hear in his 1812 overture playing at the beginning. That overture was written to commemorate the Russian victory over the Napoleonic armies. His one and only violin concerto and his piano concerto No. 1 are some of the most acclaimed concertos ever written, and his 4th, 5th, and 6th symphonies are also fan favorites.